On this edition of Southern Newsweek, a long-running Dunedin chief executive is set to spread his wings. Christchurch police are asking for help in relation to a recent large fire. And a cold snap closed roads as it brought snow to sea level. Kia ora, good evening, I'm Hannah Wilkins. The Dunedin International Airport is saying farewell to its CEO, Richard Roberts. Roberts has been with the company since 1999 and has helped steer the airport through its most troubling time.
Walking away after more than 20 years at the airport. Dunedin International Airport CEO Richard Roberts is saying goodbye to the place he loves. Roberts started at the company in 1999 and took over as CEO 7 years ago, though he says it's up to others to say if his efforts deserve a thumbs up.
And hopefully I'll let other people judge whether the place has been left in a better position than when it was when I started. We've had long enough. And so I thought, probably time to have a rest, and I really do want to rest. I'm feeling quite tired.
He says there's plenty of highlights to look back on, but getting the job of CEO was particularly special.
Given a role of leading a place for the first time to be in a leadership role of a place that I was passionate about Otago and Dunedin and the airport and the industry. So that's really a standout for me, for somebody, giving you, trusting in you to lead the organisation.
A low point for Roberts, though, was the pandemic's effect on the airport and having to lay off a quarter of his staff.
That was really tough. That was really, really tough. I didn't enjoy that, but it was something that had to be done. Nobody knew when this thing was going to end. So that was really hard through COVID.
The airport's board is announcing who will follow in Roberts' footsteps later this year. In Dunedin, the South today.
Police are asking for the public's help to identify a group of people filmed at a Christchurch scrap metal yard on the night of a serious blaze. Security camera footage has been released, which shows 4 individuals near a shipping container shortly before the fire began in Woolston.
Police investigating the suspicious fire that broke out at a Christchurch scrap metal yard on August 17 have released CCTV footage of the potential suspects. The footage shows a group of 4 people at the National Steel Limited site on Garlands Road around the time of the blaze. Significant resources were needed by Fire and Emergency New Zealand to get the large blaze under control. Police say they are treating the incident as extremely serious. They say the fire risked lives and could have caused considerable damage to nearby homes and businesses. Police are asking for anyone with information to contact them as soon as possible. In Christchurch, the South today.
Roads were closed and there were multiple car accidents as a wintry blast visited the south this week. Snow froze on some roads around the city, making conditions treacherous, especially on the hills, with the weather also closing State Highway 1 north of the city overnight.
Last night's snow and ice made for slippery roads in Dunedin, prompting police warnings for people not to drive. The Dunedin City Council says hail, snow and freezing conditions overnight caused treacherous driving conditions, with snow and widespread black ice in many areas, especially in the city's hill suburbs. Contractors were out gritting roads overnight, but conditions meant they weren't able to reach all areas. Some drivers found themselves stuck after losing traction uphill, while others could be seen and heard deliberately losing traction on the slippery roads. Minor crashes and traffic incidents were reported around the city, with vehicles sliding into fences and parked cars. Some motorists decided the best plan was to abandon their vehicles along the roadside last night, picking them up this morning. The city's northern motorway was closed overnight but reopened this morning with cautions in place. 3 Mile Hill Road and a highway between Middlemarch and Outram were also both closed due to snow. Met Service says while the worst of the weather was set to clear away today, temperatures this week will remain cooler than the region has experienced recently. In Dunedin, the South today.
A Christchurch resident is campaigning to reduce the number of liquor outlets near his home. Paul McMahon believes alcohol is being sold too cheaply, causing harm to the more vulnerable members of his community.
Liquor outlets are selling bargain basement booze as they compete for the local market, says Wilson resident Paul McMahon.
They're selling products that are particularly harmful at particularly low prices. Lower the price, the higher the alcohol content, the higher the harm.
In the Woolston area alone, there are around 13 liquor outlets.
Quite common all around New Zealand for communities like ours, working class communities, to have more than their fair share. I really push back against the resignation that it has to be like this.
McManus supporters are appealing a recent decision by the Alcohol Regulatory and Licensing Authority.
We believe that the committee decided wrongly, and one of the major reasons for that is because the underlying licence has expired.
He is vowing to continue his campaign to reduce the number of outlets, which he says is causing harm to his community. In Christchurch, the South Today.
It's cannabis processing time at Southern Medicinal in Mataura. The quality and quantity of oil being extracted from this year's medicinal cannabis crop is being described by the manager as like landing a rocket on the moon.
Southern Medicinal team members are riding high on the impending success of this year's medicinal cannabis crop. Managing Director Greg Marshall says staff processing the first crop of locally grown flower heads at the company's Mataura processing plant are very pleased with a high oil yield.
We're hitting world-class levels of yield and quality. It's like we landed a rocket on the moon after starting 5 years ago.
Unlike plants grown as a drug to make users high, the cannabis Southern Medicinal grows has very low amounts of the psychoactive ingredient tetrahydrocannabinol, but has high levels of cannabidiol or CBD, which helps relieve pain and other symptoms. Marshall says the specialist equipment the team's using squeezes up to 22% of oil out of the flower heads. He says the quality of the product is also high, with a CBD content of more than 18%. In Mataura, the South Today.
After the break on Southern Newsweek, a peace train is donated to Christchurch, while 50cc scooter enthusiasts get their little motors running and head for the highway. We'll see you after the break. Tēnā koe, welcome back. Cantabrians were eager to try out Christchurch's newest experience last weekend. The city has been gifted a miniature peace train thanks to the musical artist formerly known as Cat Stevens.
Children of all ages were among the first to ride Christchurch's newest attraction, a peace train donated to the city following the March 15 terror attacks.
Well, it was a gift to Christchurch from Yusuf Islam, well known to everybody as Cat Stevens, and it was to promote peace in the city and the idea of inclusion and tolerance.
The train is made in Canada and includes a wheelchair accessible carriage. The Christchurch City Council Parks Unit and a team of volunteers are tasked with running the attraction. Each trip takes approximately 15 minutes.
It's fairly simple to drive. It's a lovely little electric train, so it has a pedal to go, and once you take your foot off, it stops.
The Peace Train offers rides every second Sunday, weather permitting. In Christchurch, the South Today.
Country music performer Suzanne Prentice is singing the praises of the Otago Regional Rescue Helicopters. She says she owes her life to the trust behind the choppers, who came to her aid following a major heart attack earlier this year.
Getting a tour of the type of rescue helicopter that saved her life. Country music star Suzanne Prentice suffered a major heart attack earlier this year. But luckily the Otago Regional Rescue Helicopter, which also operates in Southland, was there to fly her to Dunedin Hospital.
It's just amazing. But, if they hadn't been there, I don't think I would have made it.
Since her life-saving flight, 63-year-old Prentice has learned more about the pilots, the intensive care paramedics and equipment aboard the rescue helicopters.
It's saving so many lives. The equipment, the way they are manned in these helicopters is the best in the country, and I think a lot of people don't know that.
The Otago Regional Rescue Helicopter Trust is partially government funded, but also relies on donations and sponsorships from the local community. In Invercargill, the South Today.
Rugby balls were swapped for shovels as a trio of All Blacks joined school students for some native gardening in Christchurch. Riccarton Bush is home to a heritage podocarp forest, and a fundraising campaign's been launched to improve the area.
All Black and Crusaders lock Sam Whitelock, finding a good spot to plant a totara seedling. Students from nearby Riccarton High School joined in recently to help replant a section of native forest at Riccarton Bush.
Awesome history with the Dean's family, especially with the rugby side of it.
Whitelock was joined by All Black Highlanders, Ethan de Groot and Josh Dixon. The trio all swapping their rugby boots for gumboots as part of the All Blacks community outreach program.
It's a bit of a helping hand, trying to make this bush as natural as we can and just sort of replace some of the bigger totara that we have lost.
Riccarton Bush is a podocarp forest spanning 12 hectares, situated just 3 kilometres from Christchurch's city centre. The heritage site attracts more than 75,000 visitors each year. The Riccarton Bush Trust recently launched a $1 million fundraising campaign, which will allow them to upgrade infrastructure and the walking tracks and rejuvenate the bush back to its native state.
Riccarton Bush is an absolute treasure for all of Christchurch. It's in the middle of the city. It's some of the trees here are up to 600 years old.
He says it was a great educational experience for the students, with 17 new totara trees planted. In Christchurch, the South Today.
More than 100 scooter riders took to the roads last weekend, riding 220 kilometres from Bluff to Queenstown for charity. But wind and rain made this year's fundraising challenge a particularly gruelling one.
Finally reaching Queenstown nearly 8 hours after having left Bluff. About 120 scooter riders battled rain and winds in this year's Southern Scooter Challenge. After being cancelled last year due to COVID, the riders were back for the fundraiser, traversing the southern highways as fast as they were able.
Most of them can only go about 50 kilometres an hour, although I do understand some of them might have taken some bungs out. They might get 60 kilometres an hour.
The riders raised more than $100,000, with the funds from this year's event to be split between Hospice Southland and Invercargill's new charity hospital. The hospice's CEO, Dr. Flora Gilkison, says Saturday's gruelling conditions match the spirit of the hospice.
Our motto is living every moment, and I think that on the Southern Scooter Challenge they will be living every moment today.
The fundraiser is still open for donations from the public. In Queenstown, the South Today.
A 15-year-old Alexandra teen has helped to raise $30,000 for his friend's younger brother who's battling cancer. A large crowd of around 200 people gathered to watch Jaden McKenzie lose his impressive mullet hairstyle, along with others who shed their hair for the good cause.
Here today, all but gone tomorrow. When 15-year-old Jaden McKenzie learned his best mate's younger brother had cancer, he thought of a way to help. At that point, he already had an impressive mullet, so decided to grow it before getting donations to have it publicly shaved. His efforts alone raising about $2,000 at Friday night's event. Speaking before his sponsored hair loss, he said as soon as he knew 9-year-old Maddox Gale was sick, he wanted to help.
Well, I always wanted to do something with my hair, and so I figured as soon as there was an opportunity with Maddox having cancer, that was my idea set, and that's what I wanted to do.
About 200 people gathered for the event, organised by the Alexandra District Club on Friday night. Jaden's lengthy mullet was removed carefully as it was being sold to a wig maker who makes real hair wigs for people who've lost hair during chemotherapy. During the event, more people chose to get shaved, including Maddox's brothers, Dylan and William. These two gents opting for the skullet hairstyle. The combined effort of the auction and Jaden's haircut raising more than $30,000. And yes, this is the hairstyle Jaden's wearing to Dunstan High School this week. In Alexandra, the South Today.
Whitebait season began with barely a breeze across the glassy currents of the Mata'o or Clutha River. And for one southern man, the trip to the riverbank is one he's made for many years, even though there's something about the whitebait he just can't stomach.
Sprightly 81-year-old Mac Oliver making his way down the banks of the Mata'o branch of the Clutha River. It's a route he's taken for many years at the start of the whitebait season, despite not being fond of the tiny fish.
Do you eat the whitebait?
No, I don't. My wife does and the family do,
Yeah. And neighbours like it, yeah.
Some galaxids live in fresh water all their lives, but whitebait species have a partial marine life cycle. Larvae hatch in a river before being washed into the ocean, later returning as juveniles to complete their development to full adulthood, if they get past the nets. Loading his trusty hinaki or net into the river, Oliver admits he's not sure why he returns to his spot on the riverbank each year.
Yeah, I don't know. I like catching it. I can't explain it. It's just something. And I think most people that come down whitebait, they're probably the same.
Mac Oliver's stand is a lean-to shelter on a tethered raft, with a rickety gangplank to a shed on the bank. The Department of Conservation has reduced the amount of time people are allowed to scoop up the tiny fish to 6 weeks, with the shorter season aimed at giving the threatened species time to recover. In Kaitangata, the South Today.
Still to come on this edition of Southern Newsweek, a new style of public art is getting stuck up across Christchurch, and ball sports are to the fore in Gore. We'll see you soon. Tēnā koe, welcome back. Christchurch artists are looking for new ways to express themselves, increasingly taking to the streets with rolls of paper and buckets of glue. Paste-up art is fast gaining popularity around the country because of the diversity and adaptability of the paper-based medium.
Ewoks, stormtroopers, and even David Bowie are among the characters popping up on walls around Christchurch. A growing number of local artists are keeping busy creating smaller and often more thoughtful and intricate works of art called paste-ups.
And I love all the street art out there, but a lot of it's not for me. So I thought, well, what do I want to see on the wall? And I thought, well, how about a life-size stormtrooper?
Cat Lee's inspired by pop culture, especially old and vintage toys. He says paste-ups are one of urban art's most enduring forms. The works are created by artists at home or in their studios, before being pasted onto the walls of derelict buildings.
I started out with the more obvious characters that most people knew, but now I'm doing more the second-tier figures, like the Agnots, like the worker bees of the city. Not everyone gets to be Luke Skywalker or Darth Vader or Princess Leia, so most of us just worker bees.
A central city bollard's been transformed into an installation platform for paste-up art, thanks to support from the City Council's Enliven Places Fund. Cat Lee's among the artists invited to exhibit and wants suggestions from the public around what they'd like to see. And while art's in the eye of the beholder, one recent paste-up didn't impress those in authority, the replacement poster becoming a subtle commentary on artistic freedom. In Christchurch, the South Today.
A Dunedin medical charity has been given a unique donation by New Zealand Police, a new puppy. The 9-week-old Golden Labrador is set to join a team of other working dogs, all helping to detect cancers in humans.
Just 9 weeks old and still learning about the world, this puppy called Hogan has been gifted by New Zealand Police to a local charity called Canine Medical Detection. Hogan will eventually join Levi and Frida, 2 other dogs that have already been trained by the charity to use their powerful noses to detect bowel and prostate cancer in humans.
We're not sure which cancer he will be training for. He has to just grow up, be a puppy, learn about the world before he actually commences formal training.
Hogan is one of a litter of 5 pups from a police detector dog, and Canine Medical Detection CEO Pauline Blomfield says getting a puppy of Hogan's calibre is a big deal.
He comes from a very high quality working line background, and these dogs are not easy to come by, hence how privileged we feel that the police have gifted this dog to us.
Hogan's name is a tribute to the donations the charity has received from local roading company Fulton Hogan. In Dunedin, the South Today.
Young athletes from across the South Island have been competing in Gore at the 2022 Mixed Secondary School Hockey Tournament. St Peter's College and Mount Aspiring College met over the weekend in a closely fought final.
15 South Island hockey teams converged on Gore last week, taking part in the 2022 Mixed Secondary Schools Hockey Tournament. St Peter's College came second in the final to Mount Aspiring College, with the local captain George Headley philosophical about the result.
In the quarterfinals we won, semi-finals we won, and just today we lost 3-1 to Mount Aspiring. Well, that's the game, I guess.
The teams were divided into 4 pools for Monday's and Tuesday's games to find the top 8 teams for Wednesday's quarter-finals. Headley says even though they were beaten in the final, he believes the team had been playing better during the tournament.
We just wanted to play as a team, really, just see how far we progressed. Making a final was a big tip-off, really. It's really good for the team's culture and school's performance, really.
In the final, Mount Aspiring opened the scoring and were up 1-0 at half-time. Early in the second half, St Peter's scored to keep the large crowd's hopes alive, but Mount Aspiring quickly replied, eventually taking out the tournament. In Gore, the South Today.
Basketball proved a popular sport for young high school pupils in Southland last week. A number of schools flocked to Gore for a series of one-day tournaments hosted by the local high school.
A game that's growing in popularity. Gore High School hosted a series of one-day basketball tournaments recently. Organiser Jack Hilton says the new initiative proved popular with young high school pupils across the region.
It was real cool to see so many different schools from all around Southland and Otago want to be involved. And even the ones that couldn't be involved thought that the whole idea of having these tournaments was a great idea.
The day-long format suited the visiting schools, with teams playing games of about 45 minutes in duration.
It's been a great day out, really competitive and a great option for the kids throughout the week.
The event also doubled as a fundraiser, with team entry fees going towards new shirts and equipment for Gore High School's basketball club. In Gore, the South Today.
Performers are busy rehearsing ahead of a cabaret and circus show being held in Dunedin. The travelling troupe reckons there's something for everyone and say while you could bring your grandma, maybe don't bring a nun, as it's a bit risque in parts.
Getting into the swing of things. Poi performer Xanthi Naylor is one of the cast practising ahead of this week's Stardust show, being held at Te Whare o Rukutia in Dunedin. Naylor says this show draws on prior events the team has put on.
So it's a bit more of a polished show than what we've done in the past, where for Fringe we did the Renegade Cabaret, and this is kind of a development on that style of cabaret, but with a little bit more polishing, a little bit more cohesion between each act and the musical accompaniment to the whole show.
In this piece, Rama Tap is being held up by Eli Joseph, while Xanthi Naylor spins Poi, illuminated by LEDs. These 3 are just a few of the performers being showcased in the cabaret and circus performance. Naylor hopes there'll be something for everyone.
So there'll be live music, there'll be dance and a lot of circus, a lot of aerial performance, so straps, Chinese pole and aerial ring. Stardust
is set to run for 3 nights at Te Whare o Rukutia in Princess Street. Organisers describing some of the content as a little saucy. In Dunedin, the South Today.
That wraps up this edition of Southern Newsweek. For the latest news and videos from the Southern region, head online to odt.co.nz. And you can follow Channel 39 on YouTube to catch our news bulletins on demand. We'll see you again next week. Matawa.
Public interest journalism funded through New Zealand On Air.